Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and today we're going to do our final Game Week 8 roundup. We'll be going through all of the press conferences from all 20 Premier League teams, looking at the injury news, who's going to be back and who isn't, as well as looking at some wildcard options. Should you free hit? Some Trippier versus Watkins discussion. We're going to talk about Haaland, the best captains, and we're even going to talk about some differentials at the end of the video as well. So if you are enjoying these videos that we're doing every single week at the moment, make sure you drop a like to let me know that you do appreciate them, and make sure you subscribe if you're new around here as well, because we're on the road to 200,000 subscribers and you don't want to miss these contents every single week. Okay, so first of all, a look around the press conferences. Now, I've tried to improve this a little bit. We're going to try and get this in better and better shape each game week to make sure you've got the easiest to access information as possible. This week, we've added some emojis to hopefully give you a better idea of whether a player is going to be available, unavailable, or there's a little bit of a warning there. We're not really sure what's going to happen there. So let's start off with Arsenal. Saka is going to be in contention. They're going to make a late decision on him. The Champions League substitution was just a precaution, as it seems. So I do think that with Arteta's mind games, it's possible that Saka is just going to play again. It seems like anytime Saka is even slightly available, he still does make it onto the pitch some way or another. So I do think Saka has got a chance of starting, but he's definitely a warning there. I don't think he gets many minutes if he does play. He's probably not going to play the full 90, for example, even in this tough game. Martinelli is back in training, but I think it's going to be too soon for him. But Partey could be available, so we'll see what happens there. Diaby, this is the one I know a lot of you guys are questioning right now. I have Diaby myself. It's a really tough one because he is expected to train tomorrow on Saturday for the game on a Sunday. He's going to have a late assessment. Basically, Aston Villa, they're not really sure if he's going to be ready or not, but there is some hope there, and it looks like they are making efforts to allow him to play in that game. It's not going to be 100%. Ramsey and Moreno, however, have had setbacks, so they're not going to be available. Ramsey looked like he was going to return. He'd already started getting some minutes, but he's had a setback, not going to be available, and Moreno hasn't really had minutes yet, but it looks like Digne is going to continue to have that left-back position for at least a little while longer. For Bournemouth, Adams is out long-term, and Fredericks, Kelly, Marcondes, Mefan, and Scott are all out. And for Brentford, it's all bad news again. No players are returning from injury. Baptiste, Damsgaard, De Silva, Sharda, and even, obviously, Henry, they're all still out. And he's still out as well, but he could be close to a return in the next couple of game weeks. For Brighton, we've got the news that Estupiñán is going to be out for 1 month, more or less. That's the exact quote. So that would be around 3 game weeks. So expect to see Estupiñán back. Game week 11 probably is when we're going to see him return. So it's probably going to be a sell for him. Milner's going to have a late fitness test. But here's the interesting one. De Zerbi has actually said that he doesn't want to take risks with Lamptey. So even though Lamptey probably seems nailed on with Estupiñán out, it's not actually confirmed. It's not actually certain because Lamptey is obviously a player who's had a lot of injury issues in the past, and they don't really want to overwork him, overdo it with these 2 games per week. So Lamptey, he looks a great pick for 3.9 million. I'm not actually convinced that he's going to be nailed on every game week, and it's only going to be 3 game weeks before Estupiñán is back anyway. So maybe Lamptey is a little bit too good to be true, particularly when you look at the next couple of fixtures, Liverpool and Man City. For Brighton, maybe I give him a miss. Zaroury, so hard for me to say. Zaroury is back, so he's going to be available. There's no update on Benson and Redmond, though, for Burnley. For Chelsea, Mudryk and Caicedo, they're going to be back. They are available. Chukwuemeka, he's going to have a late test, so he could be back as well. And Jackson, of course, returns after his suspension. But is he going to play ahead of Armando Broja now? I'm not really sure because Broja had obviously quite a good game last week. For Crystal Palace, Eze, he has got a hamstring injury. So he's going to be out for several weeks at the very least. It's apparently quite a bad hamstring injury. So he could even be months before he returns. So bad news, unfortunately, for Eze owners. It looks like he is going to be a sell. Edouard, however, is back in training and he could be back. Henderson, he's still going to be out. So Johnston should be the nailed-on Crystal Palace goalkeeper for the foreseeable future. For Everton, Calvert-Lewin is apparently nearly at 100%, so that's good news for him. He's going to be available. Harrison is at 100%, so that's good news. Coleman, Dele Alli, and Gomez, they are still out, however. For Fulham, it's the same news as always, pretty much. Tete, Tosin, and Traore are still out. No other changes there. For Liverpool, some bad news here. Gakpo has got a good chance of returning in game week 9, but he is going to be out for game week 8, which should nail on the likes of Diaz and Darwin in the Liverpool starting 11. Both of those players had limited minutes in midweek. So the idea, I think, is that they were rested. Also, Salah only played 45 minutes. So I feel like those front three, because they got reduced minutes in the midweek, they're going to be nailed on to play most of the game against Brighton this week. Jota and Jones both suspended after last game week, and Thiago's had another injury setback, so he is not going to be available either. For Luton, Bell's got a hamstring injury. He's going to be out this game week at the very least, probably be a couple of weeks before we see him back. But Barkley is finally available. Andros Townsend, this is an interesting one. I thought I'd throw this one in here as well. He's having a trial at Luton at the moment, and he's playing with the under-21. So, yeah, Andros Townsend could be a Luton Town player within the next couple of weeks, which is a new player to the game. Let's see if that's a good one or not. Townsend, of course, has been a bit of a hero in the past in FPL, so yeah, maybe that'll be an interesting one. For Man City, we know Bernardo Silva is now available. He played in the Champions League, so that's in addition to, you know, Grealish, Kovacic. We've got a lot of players coming back for Man City. It's only Stones and De Bruyne who are out with injury at the moment. Rodri is going to serve his final game of suspension as well. But what this basically means is that I think Alvarez is becoming more and more minutes risk as time goes on. I think he's good for game week 8, but from game week 9, we could see Alvarez rotated there with so many players for Man City now coming back into contention, particularly in those attacking areas. For Manchester United, Reguilon is not going to be ready for game week 8. Sancho is still out. Not really sure what's going on there, to be honest. But Anthony is apparently ready to return to the starting 11. He is back in contention and could start this game week. For Newcastle, Botman is still injured. He's going to be back hopefully by game week 10. That's the kind of where we're looking at the moment. He's going to be out for a few more weeks. Game week 10 is the target game week for him. Gordon is suspended, as we know, after picking up his 5th yellow card. And Wilson and Joelinton, they're going to have late fitness checks. So there is a chance that Wilson and Joelinton could come back into the Newcastle team, but I imagine they probably won't get too many minutes in this game week. For Nottingham Forest, Danilo is out long term, apparently. Tavares should be back in game week 9, but game week 8 is going to be too early for him. And Aina, Dominguez, and Yates all have muscular issues, but they are still going to have late tests. So maybe some of those guys could play, maybe not. So that's the Nottingham Forest news. And the final page, Sheffield United, we've got Egan out long term. Davies is a doubt for game week 8. Other players may return soon, but we're not really sure who those are going to be. A little bit cryptic coming from Sheffield United this game week, so not really sure who's going to be available and who isn't. For Spurs, Maddison is absolutely 100% fine. He's trained all week. So good news, anyone who was a little bit worried about Maddison, nothing to worry about there whatsoever. Son is also fine. He did miss a couple of training sessions earlier on in the week to try and manage his workload. We've spoken about this one before, but he trained normally from Wednesday, so he is going to be absolutely fine. No problem there as well. Expect Maddison and Son both to start against Luton Town, which is going to be interesting. Solomon is going to be out for a few months, however, so that left wing position is maybe a position where they need to fill with Richarlison, perhaps. He's probably going to be good for game time for perhaps even months, because Perisic is obviously out long term as well. So Richarlison, actually a very interesting option who I think we need to talk about just a little bit more than we have been doing so far. For West Ham, Antonio, he hasn't trained this week, which is usually a bad sign. Bowen obviously was tested midweek as the striker, so we might see Bowen once again playing as a striker in the game against Newcastle. Johnson and Creswell are probably still going to be out as well, but there is potential for them to come back. For Wolves, both Buenos are doubtful for this game week, so if you've got a nice packet of Kinder Bueno, two bars of Kinder Bueno, both of those are doubtful. And Bellegarde, he's going to serve his final match of his suspension. He'll be back in game week 9, and that pretty much covers all of the press conferences. But guys, we've still got so much more to talk about ahead of game week 8. So the big question this game week is, should you wildcard? A lot of you guys have made this decision already, but this is something I want to talk about, and I've thrown this meme that I posted on Twitter on screen for you guys. If you like the FPL memes, you might want to follow at FPL Mate. Feel free. It's a bit of fun. But yeah, this is basically my opinion on whether you should wildcard. And I think in general, the answer is going to be yes if you are not happy with your team. And it's not just about injuries. A lot of people are looking at their team and saying, okay, if I've got 1 or 2 injuries, some kind of questionable players, do I actually need to wildcard right now? This is what I would say. If you are unhappy with your team, if you're unhappy with your Manchester United assets, if you're unhappy with your Chelsea assets, you're unhappy with your Brentford players as well, or whatever, that is still a good enough reason to wildcard. It doesn't have to be just that the players are injured. It could also be that you're really unhappy with your team. And I know a lot of people have said, look, the plan is to wildcard in game week 9 or game week 10, more likely. I was exactly the same. I said to myself, my target wildcard week is game week 10. That's what I'm going to do. But things change. And if you look at your team and you're not happy with it over the next couple of game weeks between now and game week 10, well, I mean, why not just wildcard now? It's exactly what I did, and I made a lot of points off my non-wildcard team. I made 22 points difference between my non-wildcard team and my wildcard team just by going a little bit early. And I know people will say, well, look, the plan is to go at game week 10. I think I'll make a lot of changes in game week 10. That's absolutely fine. You can save your transfers over the next 2 game weeks, make 2 transfers, maybe even take a hit or 2 as well. You know, for me personally, like, technically I could take a -20 in game week 10 and basically have an extra wildcard because of the points I've already made on my non-wildcard team. And I think that's a big factor here. You can take hits. You know, if you are improving your team to such an extent where even though you might not get your perfect game week 10 team, you still get a really, really nice team that just improves in the next couple of game weeks, and you gain enough points in the next couple of game weeks, you can now afford to take hits if you really, really want to change so much about your team in game week 10. So build a wildcard now, try and get it as close as what you would like in game week 10 as you can, and if that team gets you enough additional points in the next 2 game weeks, well, you can take a hit or 2 and get your perfect game week 10 wildcard team anyway. You can literally have your cake and eat it, as long as you can build a wildcard team that is significantly better than your current team over the next 2 game weeks. And I feel like that is a thing that a lot of people miss out on. A lot of people, you know, very keen to stick with the plan, and they feel like they're failures if they don't stick with the plan. They feel like they've let themselves down if they fail to go through with the plan. But I feel like such an important skill in FPL is having that flexibility, having that the ability to throw your hands up and say, look, I got it wrong. I picked these players, you know, actually they're not so good. I want to fix that situation. And the wildcard offers you the opportunity to do that. So in many cases where people are saying, I'm not going to wildcard, some people, you know, I just want to shake them and say, look, it's fine. You can wildcard. You can really revolutionize your team right now. You're worried about, you know, so many things like about having to stick with the plan. If the plan is not working, then it's fine to change that. That's not to say that a wildcard is going to be for everyone. A lot of you guys have perfectly good teams and don't need a wildcard at all. And you might love your team even if, me for example, I might dislike your team, you might love your team, and you should stick with your genuine opinion. But don't be too stubborn about holding off on the wildcard. I've had someone literally couple of days ago asked me on Twitter, you know, what should I do with my team? I really don't want a wildcard. I'm going to wildcard in game week 10. And I said to them, why? Why do you have to wait till game week 10? You don't like your team now. Why would you want to wait till game week 10? And they said, oh, I actually don't really know. That was just sort of the plan. If you really hate your team, it's fine to play the wildcard. So that's all I'm going to say on that one. A few people, and that's either people who have already wildcarded or people who are sticking with the wildcard game week 10 plan, have asked, should they free hit this week? And in most scenarios, the answer is going to be no. Because a lot of people are like, you know, I've got these injuries in my team. I've got players I'm unhappy with. Should I just free hit them out and just save myself this game week? Well, that's not going to help you in the long term. When we get to the next game week, you're probably still going to have a lot of those injuries. You're still going to be stuck with those players who you're not really happy with. And a free hit doesn't really solve it long term. You might do well this game week, particularly if you can take out Arsenal and Man City players, maybe if you're tripled out on both. But at the end of the day, we all know that free hits are so much more powerful. That it's arguably the most powerful chip in the game when you use it during those double game week periods later on in the season to cover you for blank game weeks. I mean, think about it right now, guys. Would you rather use your free hit when you have, you know, 6 out of 11 players who don't have ideal fixtures? You know, they just have poor fixtures and you're not really loving playing them. So 6 players, bad fixtures. A lot of people would say, yeah, 6 players, bad fixtures. I want to get rid of them from this game week. Maybe if they have better game weeks next week. But here's another scenario that will probably happen later on in the season. You're going to have a game week where 6 of your starting players don't even have fixtures. They have blank game weeks. Now, that is so much worse, and that is more of a reason to use a free hit. So, just an example there. In general, do not use your free hit. Do not use your triple captain either or anything like that. Chip season is not here yet. That's just my opinion on it. If you disagree, absolutely fine. But, yeah, no way I'm advising using any chips this game week. Pretty much whatever the scenario is. So those of you guys on a wildcard are probably debasing this one. Maybe some of you have managed to fit both Watkins and Trippier in, but I think for a lot of people this is a big debate. Watkins versus Trippier, both of them very expensive players in their position, and each of them has like different pros and different cons. Which one should you pick in your wildcard? Which one is the guy to be sacrificed? I think a lot of people are naturally going to say Trippier is the player to be sacrificed, and you know, that's absolutely fine, but I don't think it's quite as simple as that. I think there are other factors at play. Now, first of all, the points in going for Watkins in his favour are the fact that if you're downgrading Watkins to, you know, someone else, then you're not going to save that much money by doing it. But if you downgrade Trippier down to Dan Burn, for example, even though you've got a worse FPL asset there, you've just saved yourself over 2 million. So that's going to give you a lot of money in the bank to upgrade other areas of your pitch. So that's definitely a point in Watkins' favour. The problem with this, though, is that I feel like there are a lot of other players that can score a similar amount of points to Watkins, and really very few players that can score as well as Trippier in the defence position. For Trippier, here it is right now. I'm sure we'll all agree, the best defender to go for, the defender who's going to score the most points in the game. You know, we could easily see him getting a 200-pointer season this year. He should be a great, consistent asset to own. Watkins, however, really nice for this short-term period, but there's actually some real other players that could do just as well. Alvarez, Darwin Nunez, Awani could potentially do well if you want to go in that direction. Haaland, some people are talking about as well. Gabriel Jesus is definitely on the cards. So there are plenty of other options I think could match Watkins. And I know that sounds pretty strange to say, looking at the results of Watkins so far. I mean, look at this, 4 goals and 6 assists, but we also have to remember that Watkins has been the biggest overperformer in FPL so far this season, and he is a player who is typically known as an underperformer. So he'll do very well for numbers, but he'll slightly underperform on his XG. We can see that he's vastly exceeding his XG so far this season, particularly in the last couple of game weeks where he's massively overperformed on his XG. His assists as well. I mean, to get 6 assists from 0.53 expected assists is nothing short of crazy. So, look, Watkins is still a really, really good FPL asset, and I feel like by downgrading Trippier instead is a better way to get more money into the rest of your team and spread it around more evenly. But please don't expect Watkins to do what he did against Brighton every single game week. It is atypical of him. He's more of a consistent returner than a big hauler. And I feel like Trippier is exactly the same thing. He's a consistent kind of returner. But with Trippier, you're looking at consistent 9, 10, 12 pointers, maybe even a little bit more if he gets a second assist in a game. Watkins is probably going to average like 6 or 7 points, maybe even 8 points per game week over the next few. I don't actually think Wolves is an amazing fixture either, but certainly soon you are going to want to think about having Watkins, but I just don't think he's the only option. So it depends. It depends on your team value. It depends how you're going to spread out the money. I think that's the answer to this question. If you need to free up a lot of cash, then downgrading Trippier is the way to go and upgrade other areas of your team. But if you can find another forward that you really like and you're quite good for money right now, then actually going for Trippier is absolutely fine as well. Both players have their merits. I know a lot of you guys are going to be sitting there saying, well, I'm going to have them both. I'll sacrifice someone else. And that's absolutely fine as well. So a bit of debate about Erling Haaland and whether you should have him in your team. We did a whole stream pretty much about this topic, so make sure you check out Monday's strategy stream where we talked about this in greater detail. But I just wanted to go through this one very, very quickly one more time as the Haaland exodus really starts. He's already dropped a couple of percent in ownership. Could actually begin to become more of a differential than he has been for a little while. But look, this is a team I've built, wildcard type team without Erling Haaland in it. And when I was building this team, I kind of realized I still have a load of money in the bank. What am I going to spend it on? I mean, I guess I could go for a player like Trent Alexander-Arnold. Do I really want Trent in my team? I don't know. And I feel like some other people have kind of realized that the only real benefit of removing Haaland from your team is the ability to get the likes of Watkins and Trippier and Son and Maddison. I mean, I've thrown Luis Diaz in this draft as well, but he's not a player I would really, really need necessarily. Not really a player I'd love to own long term. And even going further than that, we've got the likes of Diaz, Maddison, Bowen, who are a little bit more expensive in the midfield positions. They're kind of your midfield upgrades, if you like. I'll probably be looking to downgrade these players to the likes of Diaby and Mitoma very soon anyway. So it's like, do I really need to save even more money? I may as well just have Haaland in this team at this point. So I feel like it is an option, but to say that it solves all problems, I don't know. I feel like kind of what's the point? What do you really gain? You don't really gain that much from not having, you know, the best player in the Premier League in your team. It seems a bit crazy, and I certainly think the next few fixtures for Man City, after the Arsenal game, we've got Brighton, Manchester United, and Bournemouth, and I think those are three really nice fixtures that I would really want to own and probably captain Erling Haaland for as well. So if you really want to go about Haaland, that's fine, but I genuinely don't really see the point, and that's my opinion on that bad boy. Okay, so we finally got a bit of a captaincy debate. Son and Salah seem to be the main picks, and I feel like they're pretty much even at the moment, in my opinion, as to who I would like to captain the most. Salah obviously had a little bit of rest in the midweek, whereas the Brighton team, man, they are looking exhausted playing 2 games per week with their limited squad. It's not looking great for them, and once again, conceded 2 goals in the first half. In the first half of games, they just don't seem to switch on, and if, you know, Liverpool can do some early damage to a team, yeah, it's going to be relentless, and it's going to suit a player like Salah a lot. So I definitely see the benefits of going for Salah. You also get penalties in there as well, and you get a team that will be back and ready to go in this fixture. Now, Son is obviously a player in form, and it's an easy fixture against Luton, very much like this, but I still am wondering if Son is only going to play around 70 minutes in a game whilst he gets back to like 100% fitness, because he's not 100% fit. He will play, he will start most likely, but he's not going to be at 100%. So we could see him play slightly less minutes than Salah, and also, although it is a great fixture in general, and I do think Son will score in this game, I don't know if it has the same haul potential, because it's not necessarily a fixture that suits Son. We saw the last couple of game weeks, Sheffield United, Son blanked. Not because it was a hard fixture, it was just because it didn't really suit Son's play style. Then we saw against Arsenal and Liverpool, Son hauls, because they are teams like him being able to play on the counter-attack, run in behind these teams, suits him a lot more playing that kind of way. Son is good enough to score in any game though, don't get me wrong, and I don't think Luton have the quality to necessarily keep Son and Spurs out. I think Spurs will score a few goals in this game, but there is still an argument to say that it's not really a Son-suited fixture, and actually for Salah against Brighton, it is a Salah-suiting fixture. So make of that what you will. I think there is arguments for both players. I like them both. Even myself, I haven't fully decided which one between these two players I'm going to captain. I'm really, really struggling with this decision. I don't think there's a right answer. I think they're both great answers. There are a couple of other options, Maddison and Haaland. Don't want to talk about them too much, but if I was to go outside of Son and Salah, it would be Maddison or Haaland. I wouldn't go any further than that one. I'd maybe throw in Darwin Núñez as an absolute punt in there. But yeah, I think Haaland with his game against Arsenal, the haul potential is pretty low. He's not going to score more than 1-2 goals max in this game, realistically. I want a little bit more as a potential captain option. Maddison, on the other hand, he could genuinely do really, really well. So I kind of like this one. But if you have Maddison and Son, realistically, who are you going to captain? It's probably going to be Son, right? Going to whiz through this goalkeeper start order because we do this on the streams anyway, on the deadline streams, with not just goalkeepers but all players. So make sure you join in on the deadline streams where we talk about who should bench and who should start in great detail with these lovely, lovely graphics. But yeah, in general, Leno, Sanchez, Vicario, Johnston, Pope, Turner, these are the kind of goalkeepers I'd be looking to play. Areola, Alisson, Raya, Edison, these have got difficult fixes. I would not be looking to play these players. So have a look at your 2 goalkeepers, see where they stack up on this list, and whichever one is higher is the player I personally would prefer to play out of your goalkeepers this game week. For me personally, I have got Turner and Areola, so it's a pretty simple decision. I'm going to play Turner, and I'm going to bench Areola. And even if Turner doesn't play for whatever reason, I guess the choice has been taken away from me. So yeah, there we go. And finally, let's look at some differentials. Yes, I'm enjoying picking out some differentials each week. And guys, I'm doing a full differentials video every week now on TikTok and Instagram. So if you want to follow me on there, it's at FPL Mate on both of those platforms. We're dropping short form content on there most days at the moment. Pretty high quality stuff as well. So do go check that out if you want to. And yeah, you can see more about my opinions on differentials, because that is one of the weekly videos I do in the short form. But want to say Darwin Núñez, like him for a differential this week a lot. Really, really do. Really excited to own Darwin going into this game week. After that, things could get a bit more techie, but for now, Darwin should do really well. It's a game that suits him. He's in great form per 90. Love him. Richarlison, really like as a midfield pick at the moment. 6.7 million is super cheap. Should be nailed on that left wing, as we kind of mentioned earlier, because of the injuries that Spurs have in their side at the moment. So Richarlison playing on that left side for the short term, it's going to be really nice over these next two fixtures against Luton and Fulham. And Pedro Porro putting up better numbers than Udogie at the moment. He's now 0.3 more than Udogie. So we're kind of in a situation where, is it worth spending the extra money? I'm not sure. But certainly over the last couple of game weeks, Porro's looked far more dangerous than Udogie, so maybe that's a good way to make a little difference, like a kind of a difference maker in your team. But that's what differentials are for, right? Trying to find just those little tiny difference makers that can get you an extra couple of points, put you ahead of your rivals, particularly if a lot of the people around you have very similar teams. A differential is really going to help you out in that regard. And that's going to be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying these roundup videos at the end of each week, make sure you drop a like. Do subscribe if you are new around here as well. Road to 200,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for 190,000 subscribers, by the way. Really, really do appreciate that. Hopefully you're enjoying the stuff we're putting out at the moment. Aside from that, guys, make sure you check out Fantasy Football Hub, link in the description, and check out this video. It's a wildcard team. Yes, a full wildcard template draft for you to base your team off of if you want to. Go check that out. Might be pretty good. We also got loads of other videos on the channel this week. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you on the deadline stream bright and early tomorrow on Saturday. See you later, mates. Bye-bye.